serious, you have to be like that. And I truly believe in do for self philosophy. You got to build it your own. You can't be dependent on nobody to give it to you. You can't go out asking for
Absolutely.
handouts or none of that. You have to build it. That's just my thoughts on how we get to that black level of excellence when it comes to economics. In my humble opinion.
Man, god dang, sight. How come you didn't say that way a while ago, man? I've been trying to preach that the whole talk, man. Yeah.
If I asked you to get a piece of paper and something to write with, and to make a numerical list of all the things that you would be willing to die for, how long is your list?
Reply to 48.
Willing to die for.
Reply to 48.
Willing to die for. How long is your list?
What is the tribal self?
Reply to
The
48.
tribal self is what goes above the immediate acquaintances of the social.
Willing to die
The
for.
family, the people you know, live next door.
You would be willing
I'm
to
talking
die
about
for.
tribal
Reply
self.
to 48.
I'm talking about those living, those yet unborn.
Was talking about uh being able to gain financial power and the results of the government interfering with said power, regardless of where you are. So my thing was, the question was, why are we having conversations dealing with financial power or any type of freedom at all if all we do is bring up the ramifications of what the government is going to do to us, and that's what we base our movements off of.
So just to make sure I got to understand it, essentially what you're saying is, why would we even have conversations about economics or finances if we're going to essentially react? If everything we
Yeah,
have to
if
say
it
is the government going to do this to us if we get to that point, or the government is going to do that to us if we get to the point, then what you're essentially saying is, why even have the conversations if every solution we come up with, if we're going to say that the government is all powerful and they're going to be able to wipe us out and punish us for trying to accomplish these goals? Is that what you're saying? Am I putting too much on it?
no, actually you're saying the right things. If resistance is futile, then what's the point?
Mm-hmm. So that's the question, and it's on the plate, everybody. That's the question. If resistance is futile, what's the point?
You said
I say I was gonna read a quote from George Jackson. I couldn't find it, so I'm gonna have to paraphrase the brother. But one of the things that he said when he was asked a similar question, essentially what he was asked was, what would if he had to lay out a plan for liberation, what would he do? And he said, first, I would get my hands on some money in any way that I could. It don't matter how I get hold to it, but I'd get hold to some money. And he said, then I would wash that money or filter that money through creating uh community what are they called? I don't want to say community programs, but recreation centers. I create recreation centers. And the stated mission statement or goal of these recreation centers would be to give children a place to utilize positive energy and to be off the streets. He said, but in reality, what he'll be using these recreation centers for, because there'll be training, exercise training, physical therapy, nutrition training, things of this nature, and then martial arts and self defense training. But he said the whole idea would be to reinstill the attack and self defense method back into our people at the younger age. He said that and that would start building the next level, the next step of the revolutionaries. So essentially, his answer was that I would get hold to some bread because it ain't a lot that you can do in this society without finances. Marcus Garvey said in the message to the people, he said that I always keep some kind of access on hand. So if the opportunity presents itself for you to make an investment, that you have it, and you don't be in a position where you're not able to respond to that opportunity. And so I give a similar type of answer. Part of the thing that we need as a people is to be in control of our own economics. You know, you cannot. He said that I can't remember who he said that he read it from, where he got it from, but he quoted a brother last week as saying I think he said he had 4 things that you have to have in order to consider yourself a community. And I believe that those things are you have to have economics, you have to have an educational system, you have to have a hospital, some kind of medical center to take care of the medical needs of your people, and you have to have a military. You have to have those things to defend and protect what you build. If you don't have those things, there's no way that you can consider yourself a real community. You got to consider yourself a hood if you don't have those resources. And if you find yourself in a position where you don't have those resources and other people are bringing those resources in for you, they're bringing in they control your banking system, they control your quote unquote military, which is the police, which acts as an occupying force in the black community. They control your educational system, and they control every one of your systems. Then you don't have you're under a hood, and the hood is something that covers you. So you're under some kind of covering. You're under that oppression that we talk about, or that neo-colonialism. That's what it looks like. So the people will have to liberate themselves on all levels, in my mind, uh, if we ever to consider ourselves being free.
I think the thing about that is it still kind of goes back to the consciousness of the people, because if individuals are taking an approach to developing economics, how is that going to instill what we're talking about from the standpoint of the community? Because the consciences of our people needs to change. Because, for instance, if we just say everybody needs to get bread, everybody need to have the mentality of making sure we have our economics in order. What I would say is, what is the pursuit of why we need to get our economics in order? Because the thing about it right now is most of our people are walking around with a consumption mindset. So with a consumption mindset, no matter how much money and bread we get, we still just going to be high grade consumers, because we don't have a purpose of the purpose that is going to do anything toward liberation for our people as to why we are building up our economics. Because what we're not putting into the equation is we're not putting it into collective consciousness. So going back to the hood aspect, you can still have a whole lot of rich cats, black folks, but they still live in the hood because they hadn't changed the dynamics of their society. They just simply became rich niggas. They ain't done nothing to improve the condition.
All right, well, let me bounce off of that, because the whole reason I'm doing financial freedom is because I have a program that goes along with it. You know what I mean? And it's dealing with group economics and dealing with changing the mindsets of some adults, but creating new entrepreneurship through children and giving them a mindset of being able to know about financial freedom. You deal what I'm saying? Because you're right. At the end of the day, I'm not here to change the whole community's aspect, but I'm here to give them a new brand of leadership. Because what we do realize about our community is, and it's bigger than our community, 98% of the people that walk around are zombies. They're followers, and they follow trends. So my thing is, if we build a new trend, they already have they have a built-in mindset nowadays of getting money. That part is already instilled. It's the part of changing that to being financial investors and controlling the resources and when I say resources, I mean the properties, your financial, your economics, and everything else that goes on into your neighborhood to be able to turn it into a community. You understand where I'm coming from? To be able to start giving out scholarships to certain kids, because we have to develop what it is that we need and want. We have a lot of people that's already in certain fields, but we have to develop minds in order to bring them back to us. And then collectively, we have to have something built for them to be able to come back to. If we want to send kids off for let's say mechanical engineering, we want them to start building their own car. We want to come up with our own car concept, our own automobile company. Well, as a group, we have to have a factory for them to come back to be able to build those cars with. But being in the place that we are now, we can't collectively leverage ourselves to be able to build those automobile factories. We can't leverage ourselves to be able to build those hospitals if we send out a certain group of students to learn certain sciences and medicines and then tell them, okay, we have a place for you to come back to. That's my whole thing of dealing with this financial freedom. And the reason why I asked the question is because I always hear people say, they speak these spells on us as man, we can't never unify it and do that. You know what I mean? Which is a spell. Man, them white folks ain't gonna allow that to happen, which is another spell, right? We hear all these little things, these little sayings that keeps us from approaching and accomplishing these things. But I feel like we don't need anybody's permission. I don't feel like there's nobody that can really stop us if we really put our feet down to the ground, and we start where we can collectively, not looking at the ones that don't agree or feel like it can't be done, but getting together with the ones that collectively have an ideology of, man, it can be done and thy will be done. You get where I'm coming from?
I
And
like
Yeah.
it.
and what I'm on is like, since I get this free college degree through the military, me going through the military, what I'm gonna start doing this next semester is I'm gonna start allowing other folks to piggyback off of me being able to get this degree, to where we start having study groups to where we all can learn this based off of one person being able to get through the door. You get what I mean?
We told you
So
last cycle, Panther back. Let me just say that real quick.
well, my bad, Panther back. On. Yeah. Yeah.
Gonna
But
make more hungry.
hey, man, listen, you know what I'm talking about? But at the end of the day, it has to start somewhere, and someone has to set the fear to the side and quit taking in the fear mongering. You understand what I mean? So that's my whole point about it is we already know these walls and these hurdles and all this stuff is out there that ain't never stopped us before. Some of us that sold drugs. We knew the police was out there. We knew the penitentiary was part of the option. We knew we can get shot. We knew we can get robbed. It didn't stop us from accomplishing our goals of what we wanted to do. You understand what I mean? Some of us that chased women, we knew they done had a husband. That didn't stop you from chasing that woman. Knew they had a crazy dad, crazy brothers, woo to woo. That didn't stop us. So my thing is, why is it when it comes to our freedom or our financial freedom, we allow these hurdles to stand in the way and we throw them in like they just really mean something?
Okay. 2 points. First one being, there's never been a movement in the United States that's of African or Black people that's had more than 5% participation. No garbage, no nothing. Never had more than 5%. The second thing is, if we were on land and we produced our own food, okay, all of these other things would come. The fact that we have to sit and wait on somebody to deliver our basic necessity to a store for us to go buy it is what's defeating us. The reality is, if we feed ourselves, we will then clothe ourselves and we will then heal ourselves of all of these damn things that are plaguing us. But we don't feed ourselves. Since we don't feed ourselves, you see what I'm saying? The other things come after. They don't come before. Right now, we got a horse and a wagon, and we trying to make that horse push that wagon up a hill. And it don't make no damn difference. How many apples you give it, how much sugar you give that damn horse, the horse ain't pushing that wagon up a hill. But if you put the wagon in front, the horse in front of the horse can pull the wagon up the hill. We going about shit asshole backwards.
Now, I'm not to put myself out there too bad. I mean, in front of myself, or I don't really want a lot of my plans on this video, but
There
I
you
do
go.
have a plan for that as well. You know what I mean? I do have a plan for that as well. And I'm also in that plan, I'm also taking convicts or cats that really don't want to be in the city anymore to help make that plan come to fruition. My thing is, my plans, I have big goals and big plans. And I've thought about all this stuff through the years. Me and Ward done talked about it. Me and Syke done talked about it a little bit. You know what I mean? But my biggest problem has been finances. You understand where I'm coming from? And my plans are so big to where I know that I can't accomplish them financially by myself. I don't have enough financial leverage. You get what I mean? And that's the reason why I need a group, because it's going to take a group of us to be able to leverage our financial portfolios to be able to get the things that we need to be in the position to do the things that we have to do. Because at the end of the day, we have no saviors coming. Nobody's coming to save us. Nobody's coming to put us in a better place. Nobody's coming to show us a better way, right? We understand that no matter who we vote for, who we don't vote for, at the end of the day, politicians are going to do what politicians do. And hate to say it, but we all understand that black folks are last on that list, if we even on the list at times. So with that being said, we have to get beyond the point of not understanding economics, not understanding how finances work, and realizing that consumership, which because we have the money, we spend it every year on buying other people's products, right? So we have to become financially literate to be able to understand how do we make this money work for us. Because all we do is work for money and then we give it to somebody else. So we have to learn how we're going to make this money work for us collectively to in order for our community to be better, because you already said it, 5%. We'll never get the full community to be able to join in, but those 5% can change everything about the dynamics of the community. You get what I mean?
Yes,
So
sir.
right now, the gatekeepers that we have, they're in the pockets of the rich. So it's an advantage for them to keep us to where we are and pretend like they're here to help us. Right? I don't want to, I'm never asking community for anything but participation. I don't want your money. You're already in a bad position, right? It's what can I bring to you to help us collectively. And I'm not giving it away frivolously. I'm only offering this knowledge to certain people because I need serious folks and serious minds in order to help us to get up out of this situation. You understand where I'm coming from? So
Got you.
and the plan I have is not just for here in Dallas. I have it mapped out to where I can take this all across America. And I can say this. My thing is I want to create a mob. MOB, right? And that's minority owned businesses. We leverage together, right? Then I want to do a DAM, which is the name of my organization, Dark Angel Movement, right? To where we become the saviors of our own instead of them saying white angels, Red Cross, the government, and whoever else. Now they get to see black skinned angels because we the ones that come to help uplift and be the dam and control. We can take control of that rapid river that's flowing through our neighborhoods and fucking us off, right? We get to control that flow. And now it's us that's in charge of our own economics, our own education system, our own agriculture system, our own finances, right? to where we can control our own communities, not neighborhoods anymore. We transform them into true communities. And people can still go on and live their lives like they want to, praise whoever you want to. But now there's a new collective. I remember when I was younger, I used to have a thing in South Dallas, and it ran through Oak Cliff too as well, and it was called the Black Mafia, right? They controlled all the aspects that was going on in the Black community. Even Dart had to talk to them about dealing with public transportation going through South Dallas at one time. And that was all the minority-owned business owners, Bacchus Cleaners, and a couple of other groups of individual Black folks that lived right there on Park Row, that in them big houses right there that controlled the faction that went on through the community. We don't have that anymore. We have it now, but they all been bought out. So we have to create a new one. That's my little tirade.
Okay.
What?
I got a question for you though, Dark. You think it's
Let's
easier
talk.
you think it's easier to build a whole new community or try to revitalize the one that's there? So I'm under the impression that
My
it's like
thing,
there's so many problems, the community is bled out. Okay. And if you're talking about a blood transfusion, it's going to take more blood to revitalize it than it would be to take the sweat and build something different.
no, actually, it's a combination of both, because our
Okay.
community is really not as bad as they would make us believe. It's only a certain sector, right? And
Okay.
then the program I'm doing is one, to instill pride back into community, right? Love, honor, and respect, right? And the other part is ownership. The reason our community is in the way that it's in because we don't own anything in it. If we own the apartment complexes, then we get to control who lives in those apartment complexes and the things that go on in them. If we control the complete strip mall, not just the store in it, right? We get to control the ones that stand outside and cause that problem in our community, right? Our thing is, if we're the ones that's doing the gentrifying without actually making the value so high to where we can't live here anymore, right? If I got a program when I'm training kids and we're using old folks' homes, abandoned buildings, old churches as the workshops, right? One, that's beautifying our community, right? We've set up signs in there, allow them young people to be contractors, allow to be subcontractors, allow the person that's teaching them to be the contractor. Now he just built a whole new workforce of entrepreneurs. He take 15% of the jobs that come out, give 85% to the kids, right? Now that you're doing these old folks' houses and stuff like that, you're not going to let somebody just come in and destroy something that you done beautified, right? Now
Right.
it becomes personal. You get where I'm coming from, because I put my blood, sweat, and tears in this. You see what I mean? There are simple ways. They got us thinking that changing our community takes so much, but it doesn't. It takes a little bit, but I don't want, see, when you said something on that last one, the problem I've been having people joining me is because I don't want to be a 501c3, right? I don't want that. I want us to collectively invest in the revitalization of our community as being Black business owners, right? We buy the materials and things to redo these old people houses, right? We donate those materials to ourselves. We help buy the tools these kids need to be able to learn these trades, right? It's not a write-off on your taxes because you gave it to a 501c3. Because I don't want the government involved in mine, no type, way, form, or fashion. This is all about us doing for us and what we can bring to ourselves. And my thing is, like I say, I'm in a financial position to where I can't do a whole lot. And that's been frustrating me over the years. Thus, that's the reason why I'm going to learn how a financial market works, because that's where money grows. You have a housing market, you got an automobile market, agriculture market. Everything has a market. Money has a market too. And until we actually learn about how money works and how to make it work for us collectively, I'm also learning financial planning. So we have to be able to group ourselves and build ourselves up. We take these students, we teach these students entrepreneurship, how to invest, how to grow, and then we take their parents, the ones that want to be involved, and we teach them as well. If they don't want to be involved, so be it. I'm not mad at you. You did what I'm saying? I'm not talking down on you. I want to take the ones that truly have a heart that want to be involved. Now, when you want to be involved the same way that I come from the ghetto and I had to learn about finances, because these are not the conversations we have at our dinner tables, we can start having collectively as a group. And I know when some parents see their kids, the growth in their kids or their children, then some of them will follow that lead too as well. They'll want to grow, and we'll help them grow. That's the whole point of this right here, of what I'm doing. That's the reason why I'm learning what it is that I want to learn, because we can go on YouTube. They're not going to give us the ins and outs. They're going to give us a bunch of regurgitated things that everybody else has said. They'll sell you a so-called plan to financial freedom, but you got to keep on buying these packages just to get nowhere, right? So at the end of the day, I'm just a man who just like all of us have been in this struggle for a minute, and this is the biggest gap that I see in the struggle is financial literacy. That's one thing we never touch on as a group. We touch on weapons, we touch on political ideologies, we touch on history, we touch on everything, but we never sit down and talk about financial literacy. We'll sell buttons, we'll sell t-shirts, posters, whatever, but we never talk about the big part, which is, if you all are a group, why aren't everybody in this joker together practicing financial literacy together? Why are we not collectively dealing with economics? Why are we not trying to own any type of resources together? All we're doing is we're meeting, we're talking about white people, we're talking about the system. We done talked about these things till we blew in the face. But the organization is poor, the people are poor, and we're not accomplishing nothing. That's just me. That's how I feel. And I could be wrong.
No, that's positive. What you're talking about, though, basically, is you're talking about, okay, we spend money on housing, food, and I guess you'd have to say clothing are the three main things that we have to spend money on in order to survive. If you take care of the food part of it, now you can take that money that was spent on food and you can put it in those other two fields, or in the fields you're talking about, which is training and development. You see what I'm saying? Because you're no longer spending X amount of money, you know, for your grits and groceries. You see what I'm saying? We have to figure out a way to take one of the necessities, okay, and solve that problem, okay, so that the resources used to solve that problem in the past can now be used to develop. That's what you're talking about. You're talking about developing by doing basically what they did at Black Wall Street. They had they took $1 and it came into the community. It spent 37 days before it left the community. You know who's the closest to that since then? Jewish people at 22 days. So they were outperforming, almost doubling, you see what I'm saying? Almost doubling any European concept of financial literacy. You see what I'm saying? Money went into that community and they exchanged, I guess, goods and services as compared to not utilizing money as the number one, two, or second. You see what I'm saying? Money was like the third option because they took that money and set it aside and they did for each other. Then when they utilized the money, they actually made progress because Black Wall Street, basically the reason white folks burnt that motherfucking bank down is because them white folks owed that bank money. They owed that bank money. You see what I'm saying? Their money was in that damn bank, but they didn't need it within their community because they had figured out a way to do goods and services to trade back and forth with each other so that whenever they utilized the money, they had an opportunity to do what? To do something big with it. That's how they had oil wells and shit. You see what I'm saying? Where did the money come from to do those oil wells? Well, they wasn't spending it on food. You see what I'm saying? They built, they farmed their own food, they built their own houses, and they took the resources of the money from that and they built oil wells and developed. And that's what you're talking about. You're talking about developing the community.
Yeah, and see, that's the reason why I said it takes a combination of two, right? Revitalizing the one that we already have and building a new one. Because part of that program, remember I told you, I want to take convicts, right? Because they already been in prison doing slaughtering animals and farming in prison, right? So with that program, I allow you, right? You work for the ranch for 2 years, right? You pay rent and it's double wide. At the end of 2 years, we give you 1/8 of an acre back there and we build you a house. Now you have no housing responsibility. You understand where I'm coming from? We're not buying food because if we run a farm, we run a slaughterhouse, we got 5,000 cows. There's nothing for us to take 50 cows, slaughter them, and feed everybody's pigs, whatever else that you eat, and fill their deep freezers and their pantries. You did what I'm talking about, to where you cut off your food costs, right? And like I say, but my biggest problem has been finances, right? Because I know it takes money to make these things come to fruition. Nobody's going to give me 100 acres. No one's going to give me 200 acres. You understand where I'm coming from? And so with that being said, collectively, right? And I have something that goes with that farm, not just us farming to be farming, right? I have businesses that goes with those farms that only deals with those farms, right? Because we're not selling our products to everybody else. We're gonna take this thing and we're gonna make it exclusive, right? You can only go to our restaurants and our grocery stores for these products. Yeah. And there's also another avenue for other Black folks that deal with different commodities to be able to fill these shelves too as well, right? So it, like I say, it's a lot bigger than what I'm saying, my concept, but I have something that evolves all the way around that encompasses every aspect of the neighborhood, because with that money, like I say, now we can start sending kids to college for certain things and have certain industries built for them, factories built for them, and the rest of the community that need jobs to be able to come in and fill these positions, to where everybody that's down the ladder, all the way down to the dude that's taking out the trash, can actually make a livable wage. You understand where I'm coming from? Because everybody don't want to be a leader. Everybody can't be a leader. Somebody has to take the trash and mop the floors. Somebody has to work the assembly lines. Somebody has to be a nurse. Somebody has to be a cook. You know what I mean? But that, just because you're in those positions doesn't mean you have to live below the means of everybody else being comfortable in society. And the reason why they are is because of capital greed and corporate greed, right? So we get to kill. We can't kill it if we don't own anything, if we don't control no industries. But like I say, I know me where I'm at. No one ever talked to me about financial literacy. No one has ever set me down and just say, okay, Ray, this is how money works. And if I ask somebody how money works, they really can't tell me. If I ask them what is the job of money besides paying bills, putting food on your table, a roof over your head and clothes on your back, how does money work? What does money do for you once you can't physically get out there and make it? How does it grow itself? Because it has a job to do, but we're not taught that. We're taught to work until retirement, and hopefully the retirement will get us through. And if not, we'll have to depend on Social Security and Medicare or Medicaid.
Yeah. Well, we also got to teach people how to basically bleed the system. The reason I live in Ecuador is because you get 35 years for Social Security. Do you realize I got 18 zeros? I got 17 years of paying into it, and I got 18 zeros. You know what I did with that money? Them 18 years, did for my family and did for the party. Okay? So that 22% that the government would have had, it actually went, it went to the party and my family. So when I added up my 35 years, I got all these damn zeros. I knew I couldn't stay in the US because that little money wasn't going nowhere. You see what I'm saying? But I mean, I didn't know, like you're right, because I didn't know about investing. I knew about investing, but it's like I didn't trust no stocks. It's like, no, I ain't finna put my money in this and then, y'all go bankrupt. Because I worked for Braniff Airlines. I had stock in that. They went belly up. They went belly up, okay? So my investment went belly up. That and including my last 2 paychecks. All that got donated. So it's like, no, ain't doing that no more. So I feel what you're saying. I love what you're saying.
I see the finger up.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh. So let me solve everybody's problems once again. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Come on with it.
Bottom line is you're dealing with 2 different paradigms. I keep hearing the words collective and finance, which I'm assuming in this context refers to capitalism. We've already talked in some of the shows about capitalism being the economic expression of the individual. It capitalizes off the individual. It survives because of the individual. Brother David.
Yes, sir.
You remember back in the day, you used to kind of get on us about the survival programs that Hugh and them had, and you were talking about how today we need a life programs. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
All right. So in your travels and journeys since those days, I know that you've spread your horizons and invested energy, time, and experience in studying things well before you were born. In fact, before we were on this continent, or before we were in chains on this continent. So let me ask you, like those survival programs, give me like 3 of them that spring to mind. When I say the survival programs, give me like 3 of them that pop to your head real quick.
Food program. Basically the food program, what is that? They had after school homework thing.
Okay.
And third one would be
free
I
clinic.
guess elder care. No, the free hospital, the free clinic.
Okay, so free clinic, free hospital, basically free healthcare, the after school, so teaching the kids, and the food program for the kids, correct?
Right.
Okay, so having traveled the world a little bit and broadened your horizon, travel physically as well as mentally, I know that you're aware that we existed a few 100,000 years before white folks, yeah? We weren't always slaves, yeah? During those times, who provided the health care for us?
We did.
Who fed our children?
We did.
Who taught our children?
We did.
So what I'm hearing is that the survival programs, or what we called survival programs that Hugh and them were doing, were actually a way of life. That they were actually living programs that, even though we didn't know it at the time, we were living like free people live. But the issue, again, collective and individual, and this is probably the greatest damage that was done by the whole culturalists going one way and the nationalists and Huey and everybody going the other direction, is that Huey and those cats weren't able to see. They were caught up in the messianic complex, the crystallized idea of freedom. You know how in church they tell us that Jesus is this perfect thing you're supposed to strive for, even though you're never going to get it, that Jesus is perfect and that's what you got to go for? That's a European perspective, evidence to which is there's sayings from back in the ancients, the idea that practice is perfect. That before this lifestyle, before this culture, we understood that perfection was a daily attempt to pursue the perfection itself, that you are perfect because you practice. That's why they say practice law, because you never get to perfect justice. Practice medicine because you never get to perfect medicine, but you practice it because that practicing allows for evolution. It allows for the process to become better and better. Iron sharpens iron. It gets more and more fine-tuned. Never perfect as a finished state, but perfect in its fine-tuning, perfect in its practice, perfect as perfect can be from a fallible group of people. So our paradigm has become this crystallization of whether it's perfection or whether it's freedom. You know, we can't conceive, and we've said this 20, 30 years ago, we can't conceive of freedom except in the language of our oppressor. So we can't conceive of us not being slaves except as they've told us what a slave isn't and what a slave is. For them, living your best life means to spend big money and sit on a beach with a Corona all day long. To them, living your best life means go out and spend money, get drunk, get fly, whoop to whoop. That's living your best life. When in reality, when we lived our best lives, we were feeding our children. When we lived our best lives, we were providing health care. When we lived our best lives, we were doing things we've already done, but because Hugh and them were detached from a cultural reality and his paradigm shift that David himself is evidence that existed or still exists, because they didn't have that there, they still define themselves as individuals, as disconnected, as going down the street, turning left, going a couple more miles and making a right down there by Keisha house or whatever, because that's where freedom at, as opposed to understanding that living the life of free people is what freedom is. This dude I know, this old cat named, what's his name? The Grand Master, Great Most Exalted High, Captain David Foreman, told me one time that if we valued each other, we wouldn't need money. And that's the reality. That's the collective versus individual. The individual relies on money, whereas the collective uses money as a tool. This is the financial literacy of liberating oneself as opposed to simply playing your part as a pawn. We can't come together as long as we believe we are separate. Brother War. God damn it.
Everything.
What?
Go ahead.
How much would it take the average cat to come and spend a week in San Diego? Like if Johnny just wanted to fly out and hang out, just roughly. Give me a number. You're going too slow. You're fucking with my flow.
You're not calling my air for it. Just
this
stay
ain't Price is Right, baby. This ain't Price is Right. Just need,
I guess a week, $1,000.
$1,000 for a week. So because there is a value of each other over the price of a ticket or over food or whatever, that $1,000, I can grab a plane ticket for $200 and go and stay in San Diego for just that $200. Doesn't seem like a massive thing, but that's because we have a crystallized concept of freedom and of liberation and of revolution. We think of revolution in terms of Nat Turner as opposed to those sisters and brothers who were on the plantation who, rather than go heads up with the oppressor, simply slowed down, got sick, had to stay in the house because we slowed down and we took money out of the oppressor's pocket. At the same time, we're setting aside resources that can be used for other things, much like Brother David was saying. That $200 on a plane ticket now leaves $800 that can go towards whatever else. So we've taken $800 out of their pocket and put it back in our pockets, because each of us has learned to value one another above the value of money. And that's come in large part between the three of us, I know, because of the paradigm and the cultural shift that we've had over the years. And it's that piece of it that makes organizations like OBU, who have done exactly what Dark is talking about, they did it. They did it. But it was based on a paradigm that says we are we. That we are not individuals looking for a tax write-off. We're not individuals attempting to, whenever something rough comes up, we bounce out because there's no longer anything in it for us, because there's a collective contribution and a collective identity. And because that's been detached and removed, we can't see that the freedom that we talk about wanting and wanting is something that we have. It's the Wizard of Oz. You've had the power to go home anytime you wanted to, what you call it, little white girl. All you had to do is click your heels. All Black folk got to do is click our heels together and begin investing in the reality of the collective. And I'm talking about those of us within the movement, to detach ourselves through our studies and to learn. This is the value of history, because David had this paradigm shift based on his studies that were outside of Black nationalism. He didn't stop at the shores of America, because that's where Black nationalism stops. That's where it began. Black nationalism couldn't exist before that because there was no need for it. And when we invest in the Pan-African idea of history, and we dig into a history before we became niggers, before we were oppressed, before we were downtrodden, when we it gives us a picture of what it is to us to be free, not to go sit on a beach with a beer and say some fly shit and live our best life. That's what freedom is to them. Why? Because getting to the damn beach will cost most of us quite a bit of money, which is going to enrich them. No, for us, freedom is to live like every other group of free people on the face of the planet, which is to take care of our own children, which is to provide our own health care, and which is to teach our own children. So the question is not so much, will I live to see freedom when it gets here? The question is, am I alive enough to realize that the work that I do is actually that freedom I'm trying to get somebody else to do? So that collective individual paradigm is something that has to be transcended. We had that once because we had a dynamic. Even in the 60s, Hugh and them had that to build on. Back in David's day, David can remember things that went on in the community before it became so integrated. The rest of us have come up in a society that was, quote, fully integrated, so to speak. David remembers before all of that shit, when you had Black neighborhoods where Black folks was taking care of each other, where we owned banks, where we owned barbershops and museums and auto body shops and all the rest of the shit, where we had our own cities going on. He can remember that. And so that's a part of his cultural dynamic. We've never known that. We've always seen white folk.
I can't say we've never owned that. I can't say we never owned that, because I seen it with my own eyes too as well. And I'm only 50.
I'm talking about a bigger stage, not a group here and there. I'm saying
no. When I say I've seen it, if you ever been, because I lived in Central Mountain Apartments on Hatchet, right? And if you'd ever went down, what was Malcolm X before it was Malcolm X? Help me out, War. What was the name of that street before it was Malcolm X? Oakland. Okay. I remember my mama when we first moved to South Dallas, because Forest Avenue and Oakland and all that right there was like a Black Mecca, right? When I went to Elijah and Peace for the first time, my mama, she wanted me and my sister to know how to walk home. All we had to do was walk down Myrtle. But we ended up walking down Pine instead. We got the Pine in Oakland. I swore we was downtown. All those was Black-owned businesses. They was flourishing. And I sat there and cried because I felt like me and my sister done walked to downtown Dallas. That's how flourishing. I don't know how it was in Fort Worth, but in Dallas, you had certain Black meccas that didn't start falling until the 80s. You still had the Black music stores. You still had the Black banks. You still had the black cleaners. You still had the black barbershop, the black bars, the black auto supply stores. You had the black pharmacies, because I remember all the way back in Glendale Shopping Center, they still had the black pharmacy all the way up into the 80s, right? I my neighborhood, I watched my neighborhood transform from a middle class neighborhood, because there was poverty, but we had a bigger pocket of middle class coming out of the 70s and early 80s, and until crack finally hit, to where it took the where we took the big boom, where we started losing everything, and it seemed like everything went downhill from there. So, and I understand Brother David come up in a time where there was segregation still going on, where you didn't have a choice, you know what I mean, but to deal with your own in your own community. But some of us, well, at least me myself, I seen the what would you call it? The not repercussions, but the vibrations, or whatever that is, of what they had going on in the 60s, all the way up into the 70s, like I say, 70s to the early 80s. And then I started watching it go downhill. And that's where I kind of got my concept from, because I remember we lived in the North Dallas projects, and we used to walk past this black man instrument shop all the time. And I sat out there and I used to look at the guitar and the drums, because I always wanted a set until I finally got me one. But that's another story. But I remember those days of looking at black folks being flourishing, like I say, all the way until the point to where the 80s came, and it just became a shit show after crack hit.
But that's an example of the echoes of what it was in David's time when David was a kid. Those neighborhoods were pockets, and by your own story, what you just told us, it was an exception. You thought you were someplace else, and all of these black, when David was a kid back the 50s or whatever, before, I should just say prior to integration, that was the norm. Every black kid you talk to, they walked up and down the street and seeing wherever they were, it was black folks. And this was hundreds and hundreds of black Wall Streets all over this country. So it was the norm to have that. It wasn't something that sticks out because it wasn't the norm. I remember that because I hadn't seen that or I had experienced it. It was just regular everyday life. And that's because we had a cultural incubation. We were still dependent on one another. When all of that, the government subsidies and all of this, the New Deal really kicked in with integration and things like food stamps and government assistance and all of that replaced black men, is really when we started getting torn apart and had these communities really, the whole cultural fabric being ripped apart. When we were being replaced, when sisters were being pulled away and sucked up into the system the way that they have been. So that was a norm, and it was based on a cultural identity that we had with one another. Once I decided that I'm going to go get my money, all of that collective stuff you talking about is bullshit to me. I got to get mine. That's the whole idea of I got to get mine, you got to get yours. We're in a dog fight now. We in the rat race. I'm against you. There is no collective as long as you and I are competing with one another. And
that's a spell we can't keep on, that we can't keep on speaking on ourselves, because I believe in the collective, right? I move for the collective. I don't move just for me. You understand where I'm coming from? Not taking it personal or anything like that, but that's one spell that we have to start speaking on ourselves. We have certain spells that we love speaking on ourselves, and those spells keep us in this incubator that we're in of not being able to rise. And once we take our eyes, and that's my whole point, we look at the negative aspect. We constantly talk about the negative aspects of our situations. we focus on those things. If we're ever to get back to being able to value one another or see value in one another and being able to use money as a tool, we have to stop speaking those negative connotations on ourselves. We
we do
have
that?
to quit talking about the.
What do we say instead? What do we say instead?
What do we say instead?
Give me a replacement.
It goes back to we can, right? Everything else, in the Bible, there's a thing, or in the power of words, it says that I am. The power of I am, right? If a person say I'm crazy, I am broke, I am this, you'll continuously be that. But if you can say I am prosperous, or we can be, or we can do this, or we can get that, or we can have this, or we can have that, without speaking the negative on it, right? We can make those moves. But we're so focused on the negative part of our situations. We're constantly talking about those, like continuously, like there's no hope in the ever getting out of that situation. We talk about it so much that it's second nature. We can be talking about something positive and the conversation instantly goes back to the negative, right? Instead of saying, like I was telling you last time when we had this conversation, when you say, well, Darkcide, man, you got to put the things on the lifeboat. I say, well, why don't we talk about the lifeboat? You understand where I'm coming from? Instead of always talking about the ship going down. And that's the problem. That's the problem that I see us having, right? And then it goes back to the question I asked at the beginning. If the negative part is such a big problem, why even have an organization in the first place?
Convenience.
Resistance is futile.
It's not that these things can't be done. It's that they have to be done in a proper way, that we have to realize the obstacles. Like you said, we have billions of dollars, but we have mindsets behind those billions of dollars that say, this is my money, I'm going to spend it on me. And as long as that's there, I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm saying as long as I'm an individual, I'm not thinking about your collective. So changing that mindset has to be in there actively.
All right, now, okay, here's where I go with that, right? My mama told me, Ray, some things are just what they are, right? You can't control them. The wind is going to blow because the wind is going to blow. You can't control that. The only part you can control is getting in or out of it, right? Now, with us knowing there are certain people with those mindsets, it's not for me to change those mindsets, right? My aim and goal at the beginning is to grab the collective that don't have that mindset, that can see outside of that box. You understand where I'm coming from? Like Brother David said, there's only been a growth of 5% in anybody's movement, right? That small number can, like I say, can change the collective, right? Or make things better for the collective. But what we have to do is, as an organization that believes that we can make change, we have to focus on the change. And that starts with ourselves. We can't continuously have the same conversations, because I know that I can't think of economics in just a selfish way of just me. You know that. Brother David know that. Brother Ward know that. Brother Syke knows that. We done had these conversations over the years of the mindsets and the problems of our people. That stifles us, that stunts our growth. Because instead of spending time on talking about those negatives that we've continuously talked about, that we know they're there, why are we not building on the positives that we can say, unless our mind is so stuck into this negative that we ourselves can't even focus on how to grow and how to build. You understand where I'm coming from?
Let me ask you a question. What's the opposite of convenience?
What's the opposite of convenience?
Yeah. Sacrifice.
I guess inconvenience.
Sacrifice.
Yeah, okay, sacrifice. Right.
Sacrifice. Okay. We don't sacrifice. All we want, all the women want is convenience. We want
see,
the
there you
shit
go with
now.
listen to what I'm saying, right? You just spoke that on us collectively, right? We don't want to. That's a lie. I'm willing to. So that breaks up the we. You understand where I'm coming from? So my thing is, like I say, we're so stuck on going back to focusing on the negative, right? When there's the other side to it. You just said it. What's the other side to it? Why don't we put that much focus, the same focus we put on the negative, why don't we put it on the other side? Right? There you go. Why aren't we continuously talking about how we can pull ourselves together and build? What are the things that we can do and make those things actually happen? Not just talking about them, because we focus on the negative till we do the negative, right? We speak on it so much to where that's our livelihood, right? So if we put more focus and start leaning towards the things that can help us build, I believe the reason why this Panther Party never evolved beyond what it went is because we kept talking about the same situations, right? We kept our focus on the same situations. We never got outside that box, right? We always focused on our oppression, not us building, right? We always focused on our oppression. Thus, we stayed oppressed as an organization, right? If we'd have spent more time on us building as an organization, as a collective, we'd have been to change so many things in 20 years, 30 years, right? We're talking 3 decades that all we've been focusing on is oppression.
Darkcide, you walk yourself right into a trap. E got his whole body up ready to tell you exactly that what you're saying has to do with where your perception was as opposed to where some on other people's was. But go ahead, E.
And it could be.
I want to paraphrase a young fella that I met back in the day who said, let's see, what was that exact quote? I ain't reading nothing by no dead people. There were quite literally, because I did the classes, so I know for a fact that we spoke about the positive things and how to get to those positive things for several years every Thursday in our classes. But the vast majority of those who were in attendance rejected it to the point that the party split. You remember, the chapter split in large part, and again, I take a lot of responsibility with a great deal of pride in that shit, was in the middle of the shitstorm, because it was my concern to push the how. We don't really want to, and I had to do a class, as a matter of fact, I don't know why, but Ward seemed to really like the class about what is work, to define what work is, because the masses of our people don't understand what is not work to go out in the community and do what it is you like to do. Work, in fact, is the thing you don't want to do. If you don't want to read and study your history before the negative stereotypes, before all the bad shit that started, if you don't want to get a picture of the positivity, the actual positivity, no crack, no gang banging, no men beating their women, no women hoeing around, no none of that shit. If you don't want to get a picture, a snapshot of what it is we're working toward, what we're supposed to be right now as so-called individuals, then we won't look beyond the shores of this country. So it was offered, and it's been offered, but just as Huey and them refused that cultural paradigm back then, and it kept them from seeing freedom that was right the fuck in front of them. Literally, they were living like free people, and they talked about it was surviving until somebody came to fucking save us, as if freedom was going to be delivered by Amazon between 10 and 7 p.m. But
okay, let me ask you this, E.
Reject the positivity.
Okay, let me ask you this, E. Now, like I just said, everybody's not going to get it, right? The ones that got it, what did you all do together to keep it going other than talking about it?
I would ask War and Psych to answer that question because that's exactly what the Panther 48 was based on. We were cool when we first met, but we grew into and developed into a family mindset, African Nadi, because we invested in the culture. War didn't know shit about Africa. Psych didn't know shit about Africa. But when they learned about Africa, oh shit, you talk about honor, you know, the whole street code and being honorable and all of that. Those are nice words. But in Africa, that back in our day, whether we call ourselves Black Hebrew Israelites or Nuwabians, whatever the fuck we call, we don't give a shit anymore. When we were doing what we were doing, when we were doing what we were doing, those things were a reality. They were cold, hard facts, way of life. But we don't want to see that. And even to this day,
Okay, now what I'm asking you is, okay, theoretical knowledge turn into practical knowledge, right? Practically, right? If you all had been building, I know Psych took 17 years off. He had a vacation. He built on the inside. My thing is, right, concrete. If we're doing these things, like I say, I don't have to have none of y'all to agree with me on this call of what it is that I plan on doing, right? But if I'm actually putting in the actions and I come across the people that's willing to do them, and we keep on doing those things, not sporadically, not here and there, not just on conversations of calls, right? Because these are things that has to be done in the practical form, not just theoretically. You understand where I'm coming from? So if you was teaching those, if you had those answers, right then and there, and you all was working on those solutions, I ask you, where are they?
We're right
I'm gonna
here.
tell you that.
We're right here.
Let me answer that for you. Okay. We had no place to practice that stuff completely. It was only be able to practice within our homes. Had we had some damn land, okay, we could have implemented that shit 100%. That's why it's like if you take Cedar Crest, if you ever went to Cedar Crest, we had all kinds of people come through there. Okay, the numbers went way the hell up on Cedar Crest. That was just from having a storefront location. Okay, what I'm trying to make you see, if it grew like that with a storefront, what would have happened if we had some land, if we'd have had 4 or 5 damn lots, a city block or something to deal with? You see what I'm saying? We didn't have
that all comes back.
And collectively, we didn't know that's what we needed.
All right, and see, all that comes back to literacy, right? Because economically, you wasn't set up to be able to uphold that. You understand where I'm coming from? Financially, you couldn't sit up and uphold that. You understand where I'm coming from? Now, okay, go ahead, E.
No, I was going to say financially we could have, because the number of members that we had everybody paid their dues like they was buying weed, we wouldn't have had a problem making the rent. We wouldn't have had a problem.
Listen to what I'm saying. That's a financial problem.
That's the mindset behind where we put
and it is. Right, it is. Right.
The mindset is to invest in that cultural reflection. And that's why I say, and what did we do physically? What did we actually do? I can't speak for cats who fell off back in the day or who we don't dynamic with or whatnot, but I can say between the three of us, because of that, we would sit and chat it up. Me and Ward would go to a bookstore at 12 midnight on a Saturday, square as we were, and sit and just chill and read stuff and chat. That's the work. That's the stuff that relationships are built on. I remember when I came to Texas this last time, and Psych was introducing me to this young brother, his girl's son. He introduced me to him and said, "This is my brother." And there was I didn't hear any type of, oh, this is like my brother, my stepbrother, my pretend brother, just brother. As in it wasn't no, black fear, this is my brother. It wasn't that. This is my brother. So those walls of familyhood have been traversed because we built a cultural understanding. That is the transition from the theoretical to the actual reality. That's the practice
Now,
that we don't do.
okay, now we do that as a group anyway. Our families is not necessarily bonded by blood, right?
But what do we come
I got a
together
whole
over?
now see this and
And then let me jump.
all right, different. Go ahead.
Y'all ain't let nobody else talk up.
I want to say this now. Keep in mind, we got a few minutes, so we might have to even throw another part 3 up here. Let me say this, and I want to just simply go back to what was going on back then from a chairman's perspective. Remember, this is how we even got to the point of having a Huey P. Newton gun club. We ended up having our first split, our first official split, so to speak, and it became the 52nd Street Division. As chairman, what I attempted to do in order to prevent the split from actually being a legitified, bona fide split is I call myself trying to grant that division its own autonomy, hoping that that division from the ability to have its own autonomy was going to practice the same things, eventually get around to the same recognition that made them actually break apart in the first damn place. Because what was happening is folks felt like, going back to what he was doing, felt like we was being too top heavy in our theory from the standpoint of, because they wasn't able to ingest what was being taken. Because of that, they wanted action. They wanted action right now. It's not enough of this talk. Let's get into some action. Because you had a few victories in the community that made you feel like you was on the right track. But because there was not a clear defined method of how you go about that, then what happened was you had this split. Me as a chairman trying to keep the split from actually staying a split, call myself trying to create an autonomy, right? Going back to what he was dealing with. At the same time, we didn't have the numbers because the numbers split away and wanted to get onto some security stuff, wanted to get onto some stuff that was about economics, but was not about a purpose for the economics. So those things ended up falling apart. So the stuff that we was trying to build on to keep the membership together would have prevented those things from happening. The things that y'all was doing in the field were some things that we also needed to do and get out of the goddamn classroom. I'm sitting there trying to juggle and keep a balance going on and hoping that both fractions lights come on and see that we all need each other, period. So that's what's going on in my mind. At the same time, 52nd Street finally started falling apart, and we ended up with Gorilla Mainframe, and then we ended up with the Huey P. Newton Gun Club. So what happened is we went from a 10-point platform to everybody wanting to focus on one individual aspect of the platform. And this goes back to the concept of what the Panther 48 done put out, which I done started making a part of our membership manual, which is the culture of revolutionary patterns. We start with the static, we go into the dynamic, and then we go into the kinetic. This is why and I got to correct you on something earlier. This is why we have to change the mentality. 2 things I got to correct all of y'all on. Stop calling it Black Wall Street, because what Wall Street is a financial district that has to do with stocks, bonds, and fictitious money. What y'all are really talking about is intact Black holistic communities. It ain't a Black Wall Street. It was not a Black Wall Street. A Black Wall Street is a high-end capital district. So what y'all are saying is we had a Black version of a fictitious district that makes its money off of fictitious business. That's not what it was. Remember,
once again,
really is.
Community was taking care of itself, but our paradigm and our training forced us to look at Wall Street and make that comparison because that's all we know.
Exactly. Because of our financial illiteracy, we think that's a Wall Street. That ain't a Wall Street. It's an actual whole community. That's just how fucked up it is. You see? So even now going into spell casting, when you keep calling intact Black communities Wall Street, you are actually doing us a injustice. We are not forming Black Wall Streets. We don't need to form no fucking Black Wall Street. We need to form intact Black communities. So we need to stop calling it something that it wasn't. Number 2, when we refer to the platform, remember back then, we would say What do we want? Right? Like point number one, we would say we want freedom. Remember, now we have changed things. Going into what I talked about earlier, now we realize kinetic opportunity and kinetic empowerment. So it's not no longer we want freedom. It's we are gaining our freedom. We have to see ourselves doing that work. That's why I love that class, because it changes us from the position of being put in a potential state to a position of realizing that only we can solve our problems. But we can't solve our problems if we're saying what we want, what we believe. No, it's what we are doing. So we have to put ourselves in mode of kinetic operation. These are the transformations that have taken place since then. But now the whole point is, it goes right back to what David was saying about the 5%. We have to get to a point to where enough of us are being conscious at the same time in a synchronized position, and us not fighting each other. Because the deal is we're trying to get enough growth from enough people at the same time in order to move in a said direction. Now I'm gonna let you jump in. I just had to make those points.
Okay, Psych, don't wait. Psych finna leave. I'm finna reference him real quick.
Before you go, guess what, War? Tell the truth. They didn't split for no other reason other than post. They wanted to fucking leave. Every fucking post. Just like what was the brother Jihad is like, there's no development, there's no growth, there's no opportunity for people. People wanted posts, and they didn't just want to be doing work, they wanted a specific post. Okay? It was like 4 or 5 posts that everybody wanted, and there could have been 1,000 other posts that they didn't want. They wanted the 4 or 5 posts. They wanted to be seen, heard, and talked about, period.
I just want to interject real quick. You noted Psych going on his hiatus. One of the things that Psych was very intentful about doing when he was developing his program for the cats that were on hiatus with him was a cultural aspect. And from what he tells us, they ate that shit up. When they saw Africa and what Africa really is, they started eating that shit up and incorporating that shit into themselves. And they already knew a lot of the street shit. They got that, how to move in the street. But now they have a particular perspective, a direction, a purpose to come on the street. In the street, you just moving just so I can move, just so I can eat, da-da-da-da-da. What Psych did was take that need to move and those tools to be able to move throughout the crowd and now give it purpose. You're not just walking down the street, you're walking to get to this particular point, make this particular move down there. He gave them a roadmap to what it is they actually were, and they ate it up. And I would say, and he's best equipped to actually speak on it, but from what he said, I would say that cultural part that he weaved in there was a huge factor just in the coming together. He didn't teach them anything about being street smart or being a thug or being none of that shit or being the OG in your neighborhood. He gave them a culture. He gave them a paradigm that rewarded their studies. As Malcolm said, the history is best suited to reward our studies. And so he did that, gave them that cultural paradigm, and it shifted that mind so they could take, okay, I might move crack, but it's not how you make the money, it's how you spend it. So I'm gonna make this money however I make it, but I'm fixing to take it, and instead of spending it and giving it right back to them so I can feel good for 15 or 20 minutes, I'm now gonna buy some tools so I can start building my own house. I'm gonna start doing with this money. That's financial literacy because it's based on what is your financial purpose? What are you trying to get to? So you start out with the collective mindset. Oh, okay, now I got that. I know where I'm supposed to be going. Now, let me get these tools to develop how to get there. Because if you just tell me how to make $1 million and I'm thinking day-to-day life just as a regular dude, I need to better my situation. You teach me how to make $1 million, I'm going to make $1 million and I'll see you when I see you. But if I have a cultural dynamic working in the background to build that on, the first thing I think of, I make this $1 million. Okay, here's the party cut. Okay, here's that cut. And it comes from a totally different dynamic, a different perspective. And that's what was missing. And I think that's what was the most valuable thing that Psych interjected into these cats that he was working with while he was on his hiatus.
Yep.
Hello?
And none of them could actually be in the party when they got out because it wasn't the same thing.
Yeah, they had grown to a point, at least again, judging from what Syka said, when they left, just talking about when they left, they had this paradigm that said, in essence, I'm an African man, thump my chest, we finna go to war in this community, I'm finna take it back. I have a purpose, I have a reason. But because of life and whatever, some folks fall off, some folks stick with it, da. But that's the thing that we did not connect on. We did not grab that and run with it. So we didn't have a purpose to carry us through the hard time. Hello?
Yeah.
I can say,
Amen.
I can say this, that and he is right, that cultural aspect was liberating for a lot of brothers down there. Many of the things, even Kwanzaa, us doing the Kwanzaa together and doing the adding the contest in it was extremely liberating for the brothers. You know, we had a moment where, you know, under the stars are where you do your fighting at, but we had a day where we actually put blankets under the stars, made a big meal, and all the brothers just laid around on blankets and just chopped it up and built, just because around Kwanzaa time. And we all laid all these blankets out on the we cleaned up, mopped the floor, put all our blankets out. Everybody laid on the floor, and we just built. We just chopped it up and built until it was a point where we were just too tired. But we just laid around and just built. And this is again prison, where dudes is laying around on the floor and just building with each other. And you know, to add before I get off, to add to something that was said at the beginning of the conversation, uh, about changing our people's thought process when it comes to economics. I had gave a talk one time. I gave a talk in one of our brotherhood classes, and I called it Thug Motivation 101. It was named after Jesus album. And what I did is I juxtaposed coming up selling dope in the hood to actually trying to establish a viable economic philosophy. I told a drug story, then I decoded that drug story and showed how the principles learned in that story could be used economically. But essentially, one of the things I asked the brothers is everybody was sitting in the class. You know, I asked a few dudes, man, if you don't mind, you know, if you're not comfortable, don't say anything. But if you don't mind, when I point at you, tell us what you locked up for. When I point at somebody, they say selling dope. How much time you got? 10 years. Point at somebody aggravated robbery. How much time you got? 30 years. Point at somebody burglar of a habitat. Everybody said they crime. And when I asked them, I went back around, what was you selling dope for? I was trying to give me some money. What was you robbing for? I was trying to give me some money. All of them said the same thing. I was at this money. So the money was the goal. I asked them. They all said, yeah, hell yeah, that's what I was hustling for. So the goal is, and I wrote it on the board. So we was hustling for the money. Yeah, I was hustling for the money. Then I asked them, what did you do with the money once you got it? And they all say, yeah, I take it. I might pay bills. I might buy groceries, buy my son's shoes, bought new cars, jewelry. You know, they start naming all these material things that they purchased with the money. Then I told them, I said, then we have to go backwards because we wasn't hustling for the money. Couldn't have been. Because once you took the money, you traded the money for goods. So you wasn't hustling for the money. The money was just a tool. You know, at first they argued with me. No, I was hustling for the money. You know, and one of the things I told them, I said, if you were really hustling for the money, you would take all the money you made, put it in a tub, and you just lay in the money. You make your money being like Scrooge McDuck, and you swim through the money. There is no way you would take this precious thing that you did all that hustling for, that you risk all this time in prison. Aggravated robbery carry 5 to 99 to life. So you risk all this time in prison to get this money. There's no way you take the money and trade it for material items. When I read about Pablo Escobar, a book wrote by he was wrote by his brother. His brother was his accountant, and he talked about when they was on the run in the Colombian jungle, and he said each person that was in the run with him had $1 million in American cash in a backpack while they was on the run in the jungle. And he said while they was in the jungle, the $1 million meant absolutely nothing. It didn't have the ability to warm them up. You do know, he said, I would have traded that million for a blanket in a heartbeat. They was burning money trying to stay warm. He said the mosquitoes were so bad, he would have traded the $1 million in the backpack for a can of bug repellent. So basically in that situation, the money had no value. It completely lost its value because it had no real value. It couldn't give me nothing to drink. It couldn't keep my body warm. It couldn't keep the mosquitoes off me. So it had lost its value outside of the market. It had lost its value because they was in the jungle. And that tells you truly what this cash is worth. It's worth absolutely nothing at the end of the day. But so I'm building with the brothers, and I say, so you're using the money because the money is a tool to get the things you actually want. And so they all finally agreed. They like, I can agree with you. Okay, you're right. You're right. We're hustling for the thing. This is what we're hustling for. I'm hustling for the cars, the jewelry, the ability to keep my son fed. I'm hustling for that. And so when I got the whole room, and remember the people, the leaping in consciousness does not happen A to Z. It happens in steps. It got to go A, B, C, D. It's a slow process because you got to let people connect the dots. So when everybody agreed with me that we was hustling for the things, then I turned around and said, we're not even hustling for those things. And everybody like, oh, come on, brother Saint. You just got us to agree we hustling for these things. Come on, man. I said, you're not even hustling for these things, these material things. And then I pointed people out. I said, you say when you was hustling, you use your money to feed your son. Yeah, yeah. I said, how did you feel when your son said he was hungry and you was able to feed him whatever you felt like feeding him? How does that feel? And he, I feel like I'm the man. I say, how would it feel if your son said he was hungry and you had no response? Oh, you could tell him, man, you can't squeeze blood from a turnip. I don't know what we're gonna do. He said, you feel like you're less than a man. He said, you feel like you're nothing. And I just kept asking people questions. How did it feel when you was able to get that big body Benz? When you was able to pull off the lot with it? He said, I feel like, everybody felt good with this. How did you feel when you bought the jewelry? Hell yeah, they raised their head a little bit high. I say, so in reality, we can say that we wasn't hustling for the money because we traded the money for things. And we're not really hustling for the things because the things would have no value outside of the way they make us feel. So in reality, we hustling for the feeling. We hustling for that emotional response that we get once we see that hustle through. We hustling for the feeling. And they like, okay, I can go with that. And I say that feeling has a name. It has a name. We could just simply call that feeling freedom because that's what you hustling for. Everything that you putting in, you hustling to be free, to feel like you own a piece of land, to feel like you have control at some level over your life. And every time you got it, it made you feel good. Whether you was driving off the lot with the Benz or whether you was able to feed your child. Whenever you felt like you had some kind of power, it made you feel good. And then when you start understanding that everything we're doing is because we're just trying to get free, it's our ideals of what freedom looks like, which directs our activity. If it looked like the big time drug dealer, then my activity gonna be hustling and selling dope. If it looked like staying high, then my activity is gonna be trying to chase down the next high. Whatever that freedom, whatever I connect that freedom to, is what directs the activity that I'm gonna take on. And that's what we have to start realizing in order to make our economic ideals really mean something. And one of the things I told the brother, one of the things that we realize when you start to realize that every hustle you implement, that you're hustling for freedom, then when we look around where we're at, we have to accept that we've been hustling backwards because we've been gambling freedom for money. Because we think we're hustling for money when we're truly hustling for freedom. And no man sacrifices the thing that they truly hustling for just to get a tool that can get me closer to getting it. It makes no sense. I rob somebody for $10,000. I get 50 euros for aggravated robbery. It doesn't add up. There's no balance in it. And when you divide the $10,000 by 50 euros, I'm making less than minimum wage. I might as well went to flip some burgers. When you really put this in perspective, the thing is we just don't put it in perspective. We don't line it up the way it needs to be lined up. And that's the way we have to start dealing with economics. And all the people ain't gonna get there. 42 million black people ain't all gonna get on board with this train. That's irrelevant. Another thing that I learned from prison is we started out and we called our workout team the God Body Squad. So when we hit the rec yard, we literally could move people out of the way because we were deep. And we might have started out with 2 people. Then it grew to 5. Then it grew to 10 to the point we had to have like 5 and 6 exercises going at the same time. And we was rotating. Then it got to a point we was able to be, if we was on the south side of the unit, we was able to go to the fence and meet the brothers that was on the north side of the unit at rec at the same time and do a workout between the gate. We got so big that they start coming out with cameras taking video footage because they thought a ride was for the jump off. Then it became inspirational where other people start creating their own workout squads. And I remember a brother told me, he said, man, look at them, they copying off us. They trying to do what we doing. I said, that's the goal. I said, that was always the goal, to get them the proper activity to look at, to observe, and then finally to imitate. I said, they ain't got to necessarily be with our team, but by them doing what we're doing, they're actually building what it is that I'm trying to build. That's the goal. I'm happy they copying off of it. That was the whole purpose. And I bring that up because we have to do the same thing economically in the community. We have to move in a certain type of way to get the people correct and proper activity to observe and then finally participate in it. Remember, Hewitt said that people learn through observation and participation. And that's what I was reading. And when I was reading that, I started implementing a lot of those theories he was teaching me in the book. I said, oh, the people learn through observation and participation. If I march a squad of dudes out to the yard that's held on that jump rope that can run 4 miles after they get through with a nice workout routine with the weights, if I march dudes out there that's so disciplined that when I give them a tag, when I say, oh man, you messed up, you don't sit down without permission, make you a lap around the rec yard. And every time you see a corner, I want you to drop and give me 5. And that's add 5. He see a corner, he give 5. He start running again, 5 push-ups. He see another corner, he get 10 push-ups. Another corner, he get 15 push-ups. Another corner, I swear to God, I tell you no lie. And you know, we post this on YouTube. So it's brothers that can always say, man, brother Psyche is lying. One time we did that, the little brother out of Oak Cliff, out of Highland Hills, he took off running. And he went to follow the instructions. And the Mexican dudes all looked at him running. They say, man, he say, look, he gave him an order and he followed it. He didn't even complain. He didn't even fuss. And they was amazed by the expression of unity we were showing on the rec yard. They was amazed at it. They didn't understand it. They didn't expect to see that from us. And when they saw it, even the Mexicans was amazed by it. But my point I'm getting at is just observation and participation. We can't worry about the complete totality of Black people participating with us. We can't worry about whether they ready or not. And we damn sure can't worry about if the system is going to destroy it. Because if it's on point, they are going to try to destroy it. That's the whole concept of revolutionary suicide. We can't worry about that. That has no value to us, and it means absolutely nothing to us. We have to do what it is we have to do. Now, one of the things I think we can do, because one of the things that a lot of these dudes do to make mistakes is they sell out to the system, they get rich through the system, and they do all these compromising activities that the system have on them. So whenever they start saying, you know what, I want to be my own man, I want to stand with my people.
And it's called Our Black Party.
Okay.
It's time for us to have our own black political party, unapologetically. Because right now, if you look at the debates, we're not even a part of the conversation.
Not at all.
We're not a part of the conversation. We don't have any political power. We don't have any political leverage. And so we started Our Black Party.
You forget you like to throw freak offs, don't you? Boy, I destroy you. We can't give them that. That's what we can't do. Amen. We can't give them anything that they can pull the rug out from under us. They had nothing they can use against Malcolm. They couldn't come at Malcolm with no threat. All they could do is try to purchase Malcolm. And the cold thing about Malcolm, he was so dedicated to the struggle that they couldn't even do that. He told them, if you understood anything about me, then you know exactly what I'm about to tell you, what else I'm about to give you for that you brought to me. If you serious, you have to be like that. And I truly believe in do for self philosophy, you got to build it your own. You can't be dependent on nobody to give it to you. You can't go out asking handouts or none of that. You have to build it. You know, that's just my thoughts on how we get to that black level of excellence when it comes to economics, in my humble opinion.
Man, God dang, Sight. How come you didn't say that way a while ago, man? I've been trying to preach that the whole time, man. Man, you said that so eloquently. You know what I mean? Yeah, I appreciate it.
And what Psych is getting at is what we call revolutionary discipline. You can't get to revolutionary discipline until you have revolutionary suicide. Once you have revolutionary suicide, then you can move to revolutionary discipline. And then that brings you by way of revolutionary culture, which is what he is talking about. And we got to understand and overstand what revolutionary discipline requires is what we call mind cleansing, which is the invoking of redefining your appetite. So you have to redefine appetite, which will take you to embracing high quantitative content, When we say quantitative content, that means that now the things that you are attracted to are things that are going to be able to build collective consciousness. So when we talk about even dealing with that 5%, that 5% of the cats that we are working with are on that level to where they've accepted and being able to go through mind cleansing. And once you do that, then you can have the right perspective. Because see, psych also reference perspective. You can't have your perspective until you can develop first perception, which will take you then to definition. Because remember, we have the 3Ds. All of this stuff has been right there in our manual, but we don't understand our manual. We just simply understand. And that's the thing. We got to stop simply understanding and take understanding and overstanding into account, because you can't get to definition until you address perception. And from that standpoint,
I'm glad y'all finally coming online and speaking what I've been speaking the whole time. Because I'm already revolutionary suicide. I already changed my perception. You know what I mean? And it's just finding ways to build the culture of it. You know what I mean? So I'm glad y'all finally came online and stopped battling, trying to battle wills and wits. And let's just finally talk about the real. Thank y'all. I'm glad it took a whole Zoom call. You know what I'm saying? To finally get to this. Man, I'm over here smiling so goddamn hard, man. Y'all just don't know. You know what I'm talking about? Hell, now y'all feeling me. You know what I'm talking about? Appreciate it. Thank you. I thought I was the only one on the damn light.
My
No,
bad.
we all
We were on the other side of the ship building more lifeboats. My bad.
we all on the same thing. We just talk about different points of view of it.
Hey, we riding the dolphin. The lifeboat's too slow. We riding the dolphin.
you have to end it with this, y'all.
Yeah, I gotta go. So yeah, I think we went somewhere, and see, I think we all talking about the same journey. We just describing different parts of that journey. That's what I think we're doing. We're not understanding that all these parts of the journey belong there. They all are important, and none of them can be ignored. They all parts of the journey, and the mindset starts there. That's another thing that the dudes used to say in prison. They used to always say, how you gonna feed baby? They quoting Belly. How you gonna feed baby with them books? You wasn't reading in the world. They would always, how is they gonna help you? How is they gonna help you get a job? How is they gonna? People fail to realize, man, knowledge is holistic. Knowledge is not just regulated to one part of life. It's holistic. Those cultural studies and those Panther studies was what helped me get in a certain position while I was on hiatus. Those continuous studies, especially when it came to revolutionary and organizing and things like that, is even what helps me get in positions in the job. People wonder why, how did this dude come home and get on this stuff so fast? Because he never stopped. It's like I was talking about with Ian Wall about a week ago. I was talking about the concept of the exponent in mathematics. That's another class I gave where I put a 5, and I was trying to tell them how we got to use time. You can't just waste time. You can't sleep your time off. You got to utilize time. You don't even do time. You got to use time. And I put a 5 on the board, so a regular 5. Then I put 4 plus 1. Then I put 7 minus 2. I just put different things. Then I put 5 lines on the board. Then I put 5 with a 2 off to the right side of it. And I say, what do all these have in common? And everybody was like, all of them was 5. I say, except for this one. I say it almost looked like the other versions of 5 I wrote, but this little 2, this exponent off to the right, top right of it, turns it into something completely different. You know, that little exponent means 5 squared, and that means that this 5 represents 25. And I say that's what knowledge does. See, we can be 30 years old when we walk out of prison. We did 10 years in prison. We walk out and we meet up with another person that's 30 years old. Difference between us and them is while we was in prison that whole 10 years, we studied, we build, we trained, we put an exponent off to the side of our 5, where we meet that other person that's 30 years old, they have put no knowledge there. They did no exponent. There's nothing there. And that makes us more than just the average 5. It puts us on a whole nother level. We have a little bit more than the average person has. We walk out into the world with knowledge that's gonna help us running leaps and bounds if we utilize it correctly. That's what knowledge can do for people. You know what I'm saying? And that's what is essentially what E has steady been preaching for the last 30 years, but people don't understand that's what he's saying. They think this nigga is crazy and all he just want to do is sit around and talk about being an African, not understanding that what E is trying to give is a perspective that naturally liberates you and make you want to do what free people do. That's what E is instead of trying to say. We can't get the people to have an appetite for freedom because they're not free. They don't think like free people. He is saying we have to get the paradigm of a free people again, and then the people will have an appetite for this freedom talk that we trying to express to them. We have to turn them back into what we was when we was free. When we was free, we was African. We wasn't niggas. We wasn't none of this stuff that we don't learn to call ourselves now. We was African. But we got to get free again in order to eat the things free people eat, in order to start thinking like free people. That's what he has been trying to preach for the last 30 years.
And going back to our wordplay, we have to do more than just understand. We have to understand.
Yeah.
Okay, we can't keep doing it to ourselves. And what you're talking about is different between aging and growing. Too many of our people are just simply aging, and what we're talking about is growth. Growth is different. That's that multiplier. That's that maximizer. That's why I say we have to outpace the pace. In order to do that, you have to be growing, not just simply aging. So you're around a whole lot of motherfuckers who are just aging, but they're not growing. Just because you age don't naturally mean you're gonna grow. And that's the thing that we tend to forget, is that we think that growth and age come together, and they don't necessarily come together.
Sure indeed. And that was the Panther 48 with our guest today, Brother Darkcide, originally from the Dallas chapter of the New Black Panther Party, the original New Black Panther Party, and Brother David Foreman, originally Chief of Staff of the Dallas chapter of the New Black Panther Party. Matter of fact, Brother David go all the way back when the New Black Panther Party was just the Brothers in Black. And I thank you brothers for coming on the show today.